Welcome to the Teaching Bites podcast. Here are your hosts, Fred and Sharon Jaravada.
Good morning, Kristin.
Hi, Fred.
How you doing?
I'm good.
On this rainy day here in San Francisco?
Yeah, it's Friday, so just getting through.
Well, I know it's really wet here. El Nino has finally come back.
Yeah.
Okay, so Kristin, you are the Director of Life here in our schools.
Correct.
Before we get into that title, can you speak about, or tell us your story of how you got here?
Sure. I moved to San Francisco right after I graduated from LMU in '95, and I followed my college boyfriend to San Francisco, where he was from, and his mom helped me get a job at Tiffany Company. So for 2 years, I was working. Yeah, I was working for Tiffany's, and I moved into an area there what they kind of defined as kind of corporate education. So it was selling a lifestyle, a brand, all that kind of stuff. So a lot of history of designers and that type of stuff. So that was something that I was working on. You would go to corporate clients who were looking at purchasing like incentive gifts and things like that, and kind of give them the history and the heritage of that brand. Mm-hmm. And I always kind of thought, I would immediately come up and immediately start grad school and immediately go into education, and spent the 2 years there, kind of not realizing that it was prepping me in a lot of ways, for some things that I would eventually end up doing here, in terms of just having a familiarity with that idea of educating people to a history and a heritage. Very, very different. We're talking about, jewelry and artists and designers versus the religious who started, our schools. Mm-hmm. But it did translate well. So I was talking to another relative who was really good friends with Mary Smith. And
Dr.
Mary Smith,
yes.
Who was the head of the school at the time. And Aunt Janet had said, you should talk to her. So I called her, and she passed me on to Pam Hayes, who was at that point the head of Convent. And I interviewed with Pam, and she hired me on the spot to be second grade teaching associate. And within a couple months there, just kind of continued to grow opportunity, and became involved in the theater program. I have a religious ed background, so I started working with the religion teacher at the time was Doris Munsterman, and working with Sacramental Prep, and spent 2 years as a teaching associate, and then
And that's when we met back then?
Right, so that was like 97. Mm-hmm. So then I became the director of what was then the 3-school theater arts program. Mm-hmm. So at that point it was a 6th through 12th grade drama program, and I directed that program and taught drama electives as well, some dance electives too. And then I became pregnant with my son, Tommy, who's now a freshman at our high school, and I decided to take some time off to be home with him, but never really kind of completely exited. I was back as a sub, and kind of they sort of kind of kiddingly called me adjunct. I would pop in and do different things, and worked on the plays. And then when Doris Munsterman became sick, I became her long-term sub, and that was kind of when I started to move back here in kind of a more regular capacity. And then I guess my daughter was about 2.5 when I came back full time. So she was born in 2003, so that must have been about 2005, 06 when I came back full time. And my job has continued to evolve, and just different iterations of how we understand this work around mission and heritage, history, our spirituality, deepening and understanding and awareness of our charism. So that work is constantly kind of stretching me and putting me in different directions and connecting me with different members of our community here and within the network.
Go back to your the drama stuff, the acting stuff. Talk about that for a little bit. And how did you get into that, and what interests you in that?
Sure. So actually, that is my my undergrad. I have a theater arts degree and a dance minor, and in studying that, I always really loved that theater in its very, very early forms, when you go back to the ancient Greeks, was always a way to celebrate and worship and kind of tell the stories of how they understood their spirituality and their connection with the divine. And I think that connection between theater and spirituality was just something that really excited me. And then as I spent more time here and was helping, kind of cultivate the program that we had, I was incredibly, and still am, incredibly passionate and committed to there being this program and this place that is this safe place for kids to completely express themselves, to take risks in an environment that's going to be supportive.
And how old are the kids?
So the time that the beginning, it was, a 6th through 12th grade program, when I really was kind of hitting my stride with just my involvement and I feel kind of growing the program. At that point, we had our boys' high school in place, so the theater program that I was working with was the elementary, which was 6th through 8th. Doing a fall play and then a spring musical. And I just loved that in I think our society and our culture where, sports kind of is
dominates everything.
Yeah,
right?
really. That there was this thriving program that gave these kids this opportunity to really engage and celebrate what their gifts and talents were.
Can you name some of the shows in the years past?
Yeah. So one of the first shows that I worked on when I kind of came back and really re-engaged with it was Dr. Doctor. That was, those kids are, they are out of college, and some of them are actually back working here. I now have quite a few, I have over the last couple of years had quite a few colleagues who were kids that I taught in the drama program.
How does that feel?
It's weird when they call me Mrs. Monfredini, and I'm like, we're colleagues. You can
Colleagues,
call me Kristin.
Right.
But I love that that it was really impactful, and it's created, great, not just memories and friendships, but confidence. And I think it does so much for, you can really take what you learn when you're working in a performing arts capacity. And if you go into sales, whatever kind of work you go into, the ability to stand in front of a group of people and be confident and comfortable and speak eloquently and project and just kind of have that skill set, I think is something that is a real gift.
Just like teachers. Teachers are performers.
Right. And I'm always so kind of, it's so interesting to me that there are teachers that, they get up in a room full of, 25 kids and they are great, but then you want them to speak to adults and that's intimidating or uncomfortable for whatever reason. And I think that those are some limitations that when you have had an experience in theater, you kind of can overcome quite easily. So I see a lot of benefit. So some other shows that I'm really, really, really proud of. Wizard of Oz, I loved. Marilyn Charm and I did Annie when I was pregnant with Tommy. So we did it 15 years ago, and then I knew that I was going to be retiring from the drama program, that I just kind of had a lot of other responsibilities in my job, as well as my kids' needing me to be, a little bit more available in those hours. So when I had, announced that it was going to be my last season, I asked Marilyn if she would do Annie with me again, that we could kind of end on the same note that we began with. Mm-hmm. And I actually had to bribe her every day with a diet peach Snapple because it was a pretty like intense show. So that was how I got Annie up and running with Marilyn, and who she worked as the musical director. We worked on Wizard of Oz, Beauty and the Beast. So just had some really, really great.
Wow, yeah. I can tell you're very passionate about this.
Yeah, I love it. I think
passionate.
it's, and I think that it's also one of the things that I think is the biggest joy that I really got out of being a part of it is you have some kids at this age who are really trying to figure out who they are in terms of every aspect of their identity, whether that's, orientation or just, where do I fit in? And I really think that program for a very long time, I can't speak to, right now, really provided this like safe haven where, it was okay. And that it was, we always, kind of started the process with, we are creating an environment where you have to have each other's back. People are going to be taking risks. People are going to be sharing and being vulnerable, because that's part of being an actor. And everyone needs to feel safe so that they can really, really, take this and run with it. And I personally have had kids, kind of share with me some aspects of their identity that it was kind of the first time that they felt safe saying, this is really who I am. And, it was in these moments backstage where just, and that was a gift to kind of be a part of these kids' journey and process of discovering who they are, and, kind of the first person that they're sharing that with saying, yeah, great.
Right. This is just not a play. This is a life skill, or this is even beyond life skill. It's like you said, it's being self-aware of who you are.
Yeah.
And you find out who you are.
Yeah. So yeah, I loved it. I loved it. I'm not saying never again, but right now it's amazing. When I retired from it, I thought, I'm going to go to the gym and I'm going to get my grocery shopping done on a weekday after school. And I don't know, so that my time feels just as busy. I don't know actually how I manage to do the shows, because I have not all of a sudden just had this huge window of time open up.
But you need it.
Oh yeah. I've got teenagers now, and it's really important to be very, very available for them, I think, at this age.
Right. And I have 2 young ones, and you have 2 teenagers. Any advice for us teachers that have young kids out there in school and growing up?
No, don't listen. I'm botching it up all over the place. I mean, we're already, stockpiling money so that both my kids can, go to therapy, because I'm sure I'm messing them up on a daily basis. No, I do think, especially because you have 2 boys. It's amazing how different my kids are. That things that work to motivate my son, it's like the antithesis is a motivator for my daughter. And I think because you and I are pretty much the same vintage, I think we might be this generation where, my parents parented my sibling and I. Everything was kind of the same. It was like, if it worked for one, it's going to work for the other. And I think just really honoring their differences and celebrating their differences. And also, I have what people would probably consider, very atypical, not the stereotypical. My son is my artistic, artsy,
very talented.
And then my daughter is, kind of very into sports and jockey and all that kind of stuff. So I think that, in our generation growing up, you would have assumed that you'd be taking your son to sports practice and your daughter to dance practice.
Right.
And I'm basically, almost doing the opposite. So I think I think knowing and honoring that they're going to be really different, and that parenting them differently is required. So yeah, I think that's probably the only kind of thing that I would say is advice.
No, that's good. That's great advice. Now, well, I'll jump into that in a bit. I have a question about that. But share a story about the aha moment that you realized you wanted to be in a school, that you wanted to say, hey, education's for me. I'm sticking with it. Share with us a story about that. Or the moment, that aha moment.
I think I always knew that I wanted to be a teacher. I was the teenager that I loved babysitting. I loved being, camp counselor, all that kind of stuff. So I always, really enjoyed being around kids and creating, activities and games and learning experiences. And then there was a brief moment, in college where it's like, wow, I'm doing this theater arts thing. Am I going to pursue this? And I would have gone into kind of like the design directing aspect and spent a little bit of time in internships in that field and realized, oh my gosh, this industry is pretty bananas and this is not for me. And when I moved up to San Francisco, my plan was to go into, at the time, SF State had a Master's of Fine Arts program. And it was kind of a cohort program, and they discontinued it right around the time that I got up here and kind of got myself motivated to go in. So I kind of put that on pause, just was like, doing the working thing, and always kind of had, okay, I want to be looking in education. And I then went started grad school to get my credential at USF, and through that program and doing the student teaching and having a little bit of contact with some of the schools in San Francisco, realized the kind of environment that I wanted and needed to be in. And then when the stars kind of aligned and Aunt Janet put me in touch with Mary Smith, who put me in touch with Pam Hayes, I walked in here, and sitting in her office, she opened up the door and she said, listen, do you hear the girls singing through the halls? This is a happy place. These are happy students. They come here. Cool. They love coming to school. Really cool. And I was like, oh my gosh, sign me up. Where, yes. So I just immediately fell in love with the school and the teachers and the students and the families. It just felt magical. And I had a great parochial school experience myself, but this was like beyond the beyond, right. So it was what I had known times, affinity. I like, oh my gosh, who could I have been
right.
if I had had a Sacred Heart education, if I had these music teachers and, these French teachers and,
I feel
and all
the same
of that.
Way.
Yeah.
I do feel the same way. If I went to public school and if I came here, my parents knew about the school before.
You and I would be, oh yeah, we'd be just, I can't even imagine. Elon Musk, watch out. Just,
right.
Yeah.
Elon Musk would be teaching his kids or something like that, right?
Yeah. So it's just, and I, as a teacher here, you learn so much.
Right.
It's just this ongoing education, which yes. Beyond even just, any kind of professional development you do outside of here, just being in here.
Right.
On a day-to-day basis is just, it's just a think tank.
It is a think tank.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things going on all the time. Now, with your teaching. Now, before I go into the teaching part, but my question is, okay, so explain what the Director of Life is.
Sure. So, as far as I know, I might be the only one in San Francisco at an elementary school level. So in most faith-based and, let's say, Catholic high schools, you would have a campus minister. So campus minister would be someone who would be really attending to ministering to and attending to the spiritual and faith development of that community. Students, faculty, parents, kind of, extend that to alum, etc. So spiritual life director is really kind of taking that campus minister title and really defining what those key places of focus are, because life is an acronym. It's the life. So liturgy, which, we celebrate liturgy, we celebrate the Eucharistic Mass, we celebrate weekly chapels. So it's really kind of all of those ways that we come together to worship. The most significant one, of course, being liturgy of the Eucharist, the Mass. Interiority, which really speaks to just that inner part of ourselves, that quiet place where we each find the divine within us and nurturing that. So looking at creating retreat opportunities, ways for people to kind of have opportunity to companion spiritually and have some guidance around cultivating that interiority and giving ourselves that time to be reflective and be contemplative and to be contemplative in that sense that we're thinking with our minds and our hearts. Faith, which to me really speaks about, faith is how we move forward with the relationship with with the God of our understanding. So giving some support to that process, because we all encounter that differently, and helping create the culture and the environment where that is known and understood, that however you encounter and interact with your faith, here's a place where you're going to be honored for that and respected for that. And then engagement, and really looking at all the different ways that we kind of come together. And, I have a counterpart at the high school, and I think you could probably sit he and I down, and we would maybe identify the liturgy, interiority, faith, and engagement in different ways. But for me, the engagement piece really speaks to my work as the kind of the service, social justice liaison or coordinator, and creating those engagement opportunities to put our understanding of our faith, of being people for others, into practice. So our guys, your little guy making sandwiches for the Lima Center, the various drives that we do. So that work around, the charity piece, which is, we all kind of understand is that Band-Aid, that quick fix to the immediate, as well as educating this generation to look at eradicating these social problems that we right now are, responding to. So that, these kids, when they have kids, they won't have to have a drive, because they will have solved the problem of the marginalized and the homeless and the people who are very, very on the fringe. So that's, to me, what that engagement piece kind of speaks to. So it's a really dynamic role. I love that I can start my day. And then I do teach. I am one of the religion teachers, one of the religion faculty. So the fact that I can start my day with your 5-year-old and end my day with the 13-year-old chicas. And that's really, I love it.
Wow, you love it. I can tell you. I mean, and I see you every day, and I see you do love it. Now, what is the one thing that you wish you have known before you got into teaching, or before you got into the director of life? What's the one thing?
it's probably not super significant, but in this day and age, and when we're, especially here, because we're just a thriving, I mean, it's a hub of activity. So when we do something, especially around those things, those moments of service, the typical kind of rubric or approach or praxis, as it's called, is, preparation, engagement, reflection, and celebration. And I think if I had known going in that the celebration piece here in this specific community really should look like kind of that PR, getting it out there, letting the broader community know what we're doing, and blasting that, I think, more fully, so that we are really celebrating, and there's a great awareness throughout our community and just kind of the city that, all these things are going on. So I think had I known that piece was going to be so kind of integral to perception, I probably would have started kind of, getting all of those things in place to make sure that we are, always sharing out in the web, on our website, that we're always sharing out in our parent communication of Thursday notes, that we're blogging, there's access. So I'm excited about the new web site and access to that, so that we can have this work be a little bit more visible and a little bit more celebrated.
Right. It needs to be. Right?
It needs to be, because I do think, this is, really when you talk about things like Catholic identity, as a Catholic school and as a Sacred Heart school, these things that we are doing, I think, just shine such a wonderful light on how we live our Catholic identity.
The world needs that.
How we live our Sacred Heart spirituality.
Yes, people need to know that we're doing great things right.
So that PR piece, and I do think that, so if any kind of newbie teachers are, that's a piece that is fairly new. I think in the role or the job description of an educator is that promotion, that PR piece. We're not madmen. We don't have, I don't have a, an art exec that I'm going to give someone to and they're going to, write up copy. It's like we're responsible for that. So it's really something that I think people in the education field should start to hone that.
Right.
Because it's important.
It's important. They have to share their stories, their successes, even in their challenges. They have to share that, right? And how they're trying to overcome that. So, Kristin, name me a favorite quote or a mantra, something that you take in and it just makes you part. It becomes part of your teaching, like a quote or mantra.
There's a quote from one of the first plays I ever did, where it's called Up the Down Staircase is the play, and it's about a school, and it's about a teacher, and it's about her struggles. And the quote that she shares with her students is, "A man's reach should always exceed his grasp, or what's a heaven for?" And I think just that idea of those creating those challenges, and we talk about when we're all in baby teacher school, we talk about all the scaffolding that you do. When you're building a lesson, and so you're creating an environment where they can safely reach out of their comfort zone, and I think that that's so important. And I think I really do, especially with my 8th grade girls. I tell them all the time, I'm like, babes, some of this stuff I did not hear about till I was in college.
Right.
But you got it. We're talking about Maslow's hierarchy of need, and just different approaches to the ideas of justice. And we're looking at Andrew Carnegie's Gospel of Wealth, and I think really creating environments where they are reaching and stretching. And then you're applauding them for that effort and that engagement. And
You have to acknowledge them for that
you
effort.
have to, and you have to acknowledge them that, hey, this is tough stuff.
It is.
And we're in it, we're in it together. And I see, like, when I share with them, like, this is some, like, meaty stuff we're in.
Right.
There's a pride and there's just an enthusiasm that that I see, that the way that I see them, I think they really feel seen and heard and understood and valued.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it just kind of goes back to that quote of, we have to create those opportunities for them to stretch and support that, because they're really trying to kind of move to sort of that next level, as especially
Right.
as 8th graders, when they're contemplating that, what high school is going to look like.
Name one way how you engage your students and motivate your students.
I'm super anecdotal, and I'm pretty laid back. I'm pretty laid back. Yeah. So, and I don't raise my voice ever. I kind of do that. Hey, I know why I'm here today.
Mm-hmm.
Here, you need to figure out why you're here today, and hopefully we're here for the same reason. So you take a beat, and we'll begin. And a lot of humor. Right. A lot of humor. And I think I'm not punitive. It's, to me, we walk into that space together, and it's an information capture for them. So you're gonna I'm gonna get some learning from you. You're gonna get some learning from me. We're gonna teach each other. We're in it together. I think that's a big motivator.
We're in it together. Yes. Okay. Maybe an moment or oh well moment where there was something that came up, something you're trying to do, and it failed.
Oh, yeah.
What failed for you, and how'd you push through that?
So I am teaching 5th grade boys for the very first time this year. Mm-hmm. And I went into that first semester and thought, I had my lesson plans all laid out, and I thought, here's what we're going to cover. And we literally spent like the first 3 weeks figuring out where do you put your name? I forgot my pencil. Now,
5th grade is a big year in our school.
Right, because they transition from
lower form
to middle form.
Right.
So I think it was just this this realization, especially I think in the single gender, of the boys are not quite there with they just need a lot of organizational support. We got through about a third of what I thought we would get through. If I was talking and saying, write something down, then it would go back and they would ask me to spell the word 5 times, that unless they're the one that asked the question, they're not listening to the answer.
Right? Yeah.
So I could not believe. So it was, boys, okay, we're gonna have this quiz on Friday. Can you write down, we're having the quiz on Friday on chapter 5. When's the quiz? Can someone answer his question for him? It was just so just having to way slow down and figure out what they needed and how to best deliver it. So even now, so I'm in my first year with 5th grade boys, and I'm in my first year with kindergarten girls.
Okay.
And so,
but even then, even this is your first year teaching those kids, or this grade, you've been teaching over
a long time. But I think that
was that 17 years?
Yeah,
18.
Yeah, 18. Mm-hmm. So I think that as much as I talk about how much I love the how dynamic it is. It was really that, okay, I've got to switch it up, and who am I going in, and who's my audience, and changing the approach and changing the expectations. And I'm still working on that. I'm still working on it. And then I think you go a step beyond that, and you really get to know the 20 kids in your room. And then you have to differentiate all of the expectations for them, because they're all at different places.
Would you say that's your biggest challenge in teaching? Yeah.
Yeah. I think that really understanding and trying to develop lessons and approaches that are going to meet all the different learning styles,
Right.
that are going to meet all the different kind of, across the spectrum learning needs that we have, beyond just the fact that, I kind of thought, fifth graders were, they were going to be middle formers, and they were going to open up a page and start, and jump right in. That, we need to know these kids individually, and we need to know how to connect with them, and we need to know their strengths and weaknesses, and how to motivate them.
Right.
And that's something that you just have to kind of jump in and dig in and be willing to invest the time.
Yes. Okay, so fun question here.
Okay.
Name me a movie that you love that inspires you.
Mr. Holland's Opus.
Why?
Oh my gosh, because he do you know this movie?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So Richard Dreyfuss is a music teacher. He's also a composer. He doesn't, kind of think that he's going to, be a teacher. He sort of thinks he's going to, be really working in that field.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the story of him and his relationships with students, and his relationship with his son, who, spoiler, is deaf and doesn't speak the language of music that Mr. Holland speaks, and how he has to find a different way to speak to his son and connect with his son. And then, at the end, when he's retiring, all of these students who he has, just impacted come back.
Mm-hmm.
And, it was because, was there ever a question that, like, I did not pursue my, there's that horrible saying of those who can't do teach.
Right.
And I think a lot of teachers, we live with that a little bit. It's like, oh gosh, could I really be, working in the theater industry or the film industry, doing something like that. And he kind of amplifies that, and at the end, it's we were the symphony you created. You
Right.
did something amazing with your life, and there should be no regret.
Right.
In that, being an educator.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
It's a great
it makes
movie.
me cry.
It's a great movie.
It's such a
yes.
great movie.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm like that with Kindergarten Cop.
Oh, okay.
I'm kidding.
Is that it's not a tumor? Is that? Okay. I've actually never even seen that
Really?
movie, like,
Really?
start to finish.
Oh, you gotta watch that movie. Okay.
I know. Yeah. Yeah.
Definitely gotta watch that. We gotta watch that with.
Okay.
You watch it with your kids.
Okay.
Good old Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yes.
Okay, so can you recommend a book also that you like you want to recommend?
Does it have to be on teaching, or just
Anything that inspires you, that can
gosh.
inspire other teachers.
Inspiring? I think A Prayer for Owen Meany by John Irving is just I think it's a really impactful book and story.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of symbolism in that book. There's a lot of kind of references to spirituality and people connecting with sort of a messianic figure. And
Right.
I think it was the first book I read independently. Like, I didn't read it with a class,
Right.
and it still taught me things,
Mm-hmm.
and it taught me about language and use of language, and I think that's pretty exciting when we start to become readers independently, and we are going back and referring to the things that our literature teachers taught us, and we're
Right.
seeing how we're applying it just in our, things that we are sitting on the beach reading,
Right.
and we're reading at a deeper level.
Is that the best place you want to read, in the beach?
Oh my gosh, yeah. We were in Hawaii for winter break, and I read 5 books.
Wow.
And I did not check my
Email.
phone once. I checked
Good.
nothing. I did not watch any TV.
You were in the moment.
So
That's good.
yeah.
That's good. Favorite tech tool? What's your favorite tech tool?
Carrier pigeon. Smoke signal.
Where do you work at?
Pony Express.
Okay.
No, I'm definitely not an early adopter. That is definitely not. Fred knows so well. It's just not. It's not an area that I don't have confidence, and I think I am again like that generation where it came at us at such a weird time in our lives, and I think that.
We're the last generation that used the probably the library card catalog.
Yeah, exactly.
Too, right?
Exactly.
So
right.
we know how to flip through the cards.
I did my master's.
Did you type it
thesis.
or did you computer, right? All
No,
computer?
word processor.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So like the last, big paper that I produced, it wasn't even, and I still, in that, and then I was able to go into a library and say, I want it. And they scanned it and they put it on, it's on a floppy. Yeah. So, no, what do I like? God, I was at an event last night and I saw photos, or actually like just not photos, but a movie filmed leaving a site and going up. The drone went all the way up to do a big wide shot.
Right.
And
That's
it
amazing.
blew my mind.
Right,
yeah.
yeah.
So something like that was amazing. That was
people creating with the technology is amazing.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it's not my go-to modality for, I also do think that because our kids have so much access to it, that if they come into my learning space and that's dialed down a little bit,
Right.
and we're making eye contact a lot and we're talking a lot and they're talking a lot, that, or they're putting pen to paper, that they like that because it's not happening in every classroom.
Okay. So what motivates you? What motivates you to get through your day?
I love my colleagues. I really love my students. I really do. I think the adult community here is amazing. I laugh a lot at work.
Right.
I think that, we have fun. So that's a huge, I get up in the morning and I'm always pretty psyched to come to work. I really just enjoy everyone I work with. And a motivator, it might sound hokey, but I do 100% believe that, there is a work that will go undone if I don't do it. And that's an RSCJ quote.
Right.
And we are the legacy of these women who started this education,
Who founded the schools?
who founded our schools. And this is a magical, special place. And it's because of their vision and their mission, and they gave it to us to continue. And that's a huge gift and a huge responsibility. And that's a pretty big motivator.
I agree. I definitely feel the same way, that these nuns that started over 150 years ago or so, they were like the original startups.
Yeah.
Like you hear today.
Yeah.
They're the ones, going out and innovating,
Absolutely.
around the world.
They were so ahead of their time. They were
Women.
Yeah,
These are women.
Yep.
Not priests. These are
Yep.
women doing
Yep.
this.
And they were like brilliant financiers, and they managed real estate, and
They're definitely leaders.
yeah. And I think that them handing this education and this mission, in so many ways, and their spirituality, that they own, their spirituality, and they educate us to the spirituality and to be part of it and walk it with them. But really, when a school has 100% lay faculty, it's almost like someone giving you their baby.
Right. Yeah.
And saying, please take good care of my kid.
Right.
And what are you going to do? I mean, that's a huge motivator.
Okay, we're going to wrap up now.
All right.
I have one question. Actually, it's two questions wrapped into one. Okay, Kristin, what's the best advice you ever received? And what's your best advice to teachers?
Okay. This is so hard in San Francisco, and it's so hard in this day and age. The best advice I ever received was the day that I walked into Pam Hayes, my head of school's office, and I told her I was expecting my child. And I said, I'm going to come back. I'm having him in July. I'll be back. She walked around her desk, and she gave me a hug. And we sat back down, and she said, is there any way, are you able to be home financially? And we were so fortunate. I mean, I was a TA, so my salary wasn't huge. And so, well, I am. And she said, I really think that I don't want you to regret missing that time. And it had never crossed my mind until she said that, to consider staying home. And, it was hard. It was hard to be home with a baby. And, I missed a lot of the interaction and then kind of just that, intellectual sort of part.
Yeah.
But, oh my gosh, I needed that advice, and I needed that push, because I do think I would have regretted it. And I just think, that we have so many colleagues that are who are trying to figure this out right now,
right,
who are expecting their first child and really struggling and trying to figure out what that balance is. And I think we need to, as a community of educators, as a community of San Franciscans, whatever it is, we need to figure out a way to successfully retain brilliant, amazing educators. Find that balance where it's not one or the other, that they can, for X amount of time, do a job share, work on a part-time level, basis, so that they really don't have to choose. I've seen schools lose phenomenal educators and phenomenal community members because how expensive it is to live in San Francisco and childcare and everything else. We just kind of haven't solved it. And I want to see that improve. And my advice is for us to just, become a vocal community around this issue and really
right,
look for ways to improve it.
Right. No, that's great. That's great advice, Kristin. Wow. I think you just crushed this interview.
Good.
It's not even an interview. It's more of a chat. But
No, I like it. It feels pretty it's like laid back.
It's laid back. Yep. It's a rainy day. It's just hanging out a little bit.
Having my tea.
Yes. Kristin, thank you so much for taking the time, your valuable time, to join us in our show.
Oh, really my pleasure. So great. I love chatting with you, Fred.
Give us a shout out. Who do you want to shout out to?
All right. I want to shout out to my fabulous religion, spirituality faculty,
Woo-hoo.
K8. Woo! I want to shout out to my department chair, Dr. Budang. I want to shout out to Cha-Cha.
Mm-hmm.
Cha-Cha, is she going to listen?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
All
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
All right, Kristin, thank you so much.
All right, thanks,
All right,
Fred.
you rocked it.
Yay.
Thank you for listening to the Teaching Bites podcast at www.teachingbites.com.